The air in Corinth Prime's Undercity market reeked of industrial oil and quiet desperation. Overhead conduits hummed with faint plasma leaks, casting a pale glow on the shipping containers converted into makeshift shops and auction blocks. The gravity here was heavier than normal, but Zara walked with practiced posture, her spine straight despite the weight of her fate pressing on her shoulders. Her father's hand gripped her upper arm, rough and calloused from years in the mines. He didn't look at her. He hadn't really looked at her in weeks, not since the mining consortium had foreclosed on their claim and left them buried under a mountain of debt. She'd overheard the talks, the panicked negotiations. She'd seen the hollow look in his eyes as one creditor after another refused him. And now, she was the only asset he had left. "Remember what I told you," he muttered as they approached a reinforced cargo bay. "Keep your mouth shut. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Zara didn't answer. She'd already memorized the script. Be quiet. Be compliant. Let them examine her like livestock and take notes on her muscle density and reflex speed. She'd always known this day might come. In Corinth Prime, the daughters of failed miners were just another form of currency. Ahead, a scaled alien stood waiting, Drex, the auction overseer. His 4 arms moved with impatient rhythm, one pair scrolling a data pad, the other drumming on his metal belt. When he looked up, his translator rendered his speech in harsh monotone. "You're late. The buyers are growing restless." "She's here now," her father replied, pushing her forward like a crate of parts. Zara's gaze swept across the buyers gathered beyond the cargo bay. Off-world traders, labor contractors, a few private security heads. Most of them weren't human. Some bore mandibles, others translucent skin or multiple eyes. All of them looked at her the same way, calculating. Predatory. One stepped forward. Tall, hunched, with bioscanners for eyes. Impressive specimen, it rasped. Good bone density. Fast reflexes. Optimal for ore extraction. Another voice broke through the crowd. Clear. Human. Back off. Zara turned her head to see a man stepping out from the shadows. He wore a well-kept spacer jacket over worn utility gear. Dark hair threaded with silver, jaw stubbled, eyes dark and steady. He walked like someone who'd seen war, and didn't flinch from it. "I'm here for the contract review," he said, approaching Drex. The alien clicked disapproval, but the translator smoothed it into words. "Captain Reed. Your reputation precedes you. Always the cautious one." "I prefer thorough," Reed replied, stepping closer to Zara. He moved slowly, deliberately. Non-threatening. When their eyes met, she expected to see the same cold hunger she saw in the others. Instead, she saw regret. "What's your name?" he asked. Zara hesitated. "Does it matter?" "It always matters," he nodded. "Zara, then." "I'm Marcus Reed. This is going to be all right." Before she could ask what he meant, he turned to Drex. "I'll take the contract. Full terms. No conditions." The transaction was quick. Credits transferred, biometric confirmations logged. Her father barely waited for confirmation before vanishing into the crowd. No goodbye. No backward glance. Zara watched him disappear. Reed's voice pulled her back. "Come on. My ship's this way." She followed him, not out of trust, but because she had nowhere else to go. The Stellar Drift was a converted freight vessel, blocky from the outside but spotless inside. The hum of stable systems and the faint tang of disinfectant filled her senses as she stepped aboard. Clean metal corridors. Organized compartments. Everything in its place. Reed led her to a sealed door and palmed the panel. It hissed open. "This is yours," he said. Zara blinked. The room was small but clean. A real bed. A desk. A viewport showing the stars. Not a cage. I don't understand, she said. Reed remained at the threshold. The door locks from the inside. You set the code. No one enters unless you want them to. This is your room. But, you bought me. I paid off your father's debt. That's not the same. She stared at him, searching his face for the inevitable twist. The hidden expectation. The cruelty. He didn't look away. 3 years ago, on Vegas 7th, I watched a girl your age get sold to cover her family's hospital bills. Reminded me of my sister. I didn't have the credits then. I've regretted it ever since. So this is guilt. Maybe. Or maybe it's just the right thing to do. He paused. The contract that bound you, it's on my desk. You can keep it. Burn it. Tear it up. That's your call now. He stepped back. Galleys 2 doors down if you're hungry. I'll be on the bridge. The door hissed shut behind him. She didn't know how long she stood in that room. The stars drifted beyond the viewport. She kept expecting the door to unlock, for someone to barge in and demand something. But it didn't happen. She explored slowly. The bed was soft. The lockers were stocked with clothes in neutral tones. The room smelled clean. Real clean. Eventually, hunger drove her to the galley. Reed was already there. Sipping from a mug, reading from a datapad. There's soup, he said without looking up. Real vegetables. Not synth protein. She served herself. Sat across from him. The soup was warm, rich, full of carrots and something green she couldn't name. Where are we going? She asked. Meridian Sector. 5 systems. Basic trade run. Gives you time to figure out what you want to do. You're really just going to let me go? If that's what you want. She studied his face. He wasn't lying. If you stay, he added, there's work to be done. Cargo checks. NAV systems. I could use a second hand. And if I can't do the work? Then you learn. Everyone starts somewhere. Zara set her spoon down. Why? Why what? Why care? You don't know me. You don't owe me. Reed's eyes went distant. My sister was sold too. Different reasons. Same result. She died thinking she was only worth what someone would pay. His voice tightened. I won't let that happen to someone else. Not again. Zara swallowed hard. I want to see the contract. Reed nodded and returned with a pad. She scrolled through it, cold legal language reducing her to property, a transfer of collateral. Without hesitation, she deleted it. Reed smiled. Welcome aboard, Zara. She nodded. Thank you. And for the first time in years, she meant it. Zara awoke to silence. Real silence, not the strained hum of overcrowded hab modules or the mechanical groan of Corinth Prime's crumbling infrastructure. Here aboard the stellar drift, every system sang with quiet efficiency. The ship was alive, but in harmony. Her room was still her room. Locked from the inside. No one had entered during the night. No one had tried. It unsettled her. Freedom was supposed to be a gift. Instead, it felt like vertigo. She sat up slowly, pushing tangled dark hair away from her face. Her muscles ached, not from labor or fear, but simply from rest, the unfamiliar sensation of uninterrupted sleep. She pulled on a clean shirt from the locker and stepped barefoot into the corridor, listening. She expected chaos. Orders. Surveillance. Instead, she heard music. Soft, acoustic, human. Something gentle and old drifting from the galley. She followed it. Marcus Reed was making breakfast. The galley was lit with warm ambient panels, the scent of coffee and seared vegetables curling through the air. He stood at the stovetop, an actual stovetop, not a scent dispenser, wearing a faded shirt rolled up at the sleeves and humming. Zara hesitated in the doorway. He noticed her but didn't speak immediately. He just flipped the pan and nodded toward the table. "You sleep all right?" Zara nodded, cautiously stepping inside. The chair was comfortable. The space clean. She could almost pretend this was normal. "What day is it?" she asked quietly. Reed glanced at the chrono. "Thursday. We're halfway to Homer Junction. Trade run scheduled at Port Sita." She absorbed that. "Want to learn how to cook?" Zara blinked. "What?" "Held over from when I was stationed on Tembris. Cooking helped me think. Also helps when the ship breaks down in the middle of nowhere. Real food's a morale saver." Zara studied the skillet in his hands. Vegetables, protein strips, and spices. Real, simple food. "You cooked for a crew?" "I did." His voice was quieter now. "Haven't had a crew in years." He served her a portion and slid it across the table. He didn't sit, not yet. Gave her space. She tasted the food. Hot. Savory. Not poisoned. Her body instinctively waited for the catch. But none came. He poured himself coffee and finally Saturday they ate in silence. It wasn't awkward. When she finished, Reed pushed a small data pad toward her. "That's a basic systems guide. If you want, I can show you how to read NAV charts." "Why?" His eyes met hers. "Because it's your ship too now, if you want it to be." Zara threw herself into learning. She wasn't sure if it was fear, gratitude, or the unfamiliar sensation of hope driving her, but she didn't stop. She learned the names of every deck, every emergency protocol, the difference between plasma and ionic drive routing, and how to manually recalibrate the artificial gravity if it failed. Reed never hovered. He let her work, explained only when asked, and always answered her questions with patience. She kept expecting him to change. To shift tone. Demand repayment. Use her. But he didn't. Instead, he gave her access. To systems. To his past. In the evenings, they sometimes sat in the observation lounge. He'd share stories. Some were funny, like the time his old pilot got drunk and parked their freighter upside down on a moon. Others were darker. Losses. Betrayals. The slow ache of watching people sell each other out for survival. She listened. Sometimes she shared too. Not much at first. But eventually, her words trickled out. Stories of debt collectors, of ration thefts and silence. Of pretending not to exist so she wouldn't be noticed. "I hated the quiet," she admitted one night. Reed raised an eyebrow. "I thought you liked the silence." "Not silence. Absence. There's a difference." He nodded. "So fill it. Make it yours." She began to do just that. 2 weeks in, a problem arose. Mid-route, the drift hit a navigation snag. Hyperspace calibration had drifted 2 degrees off due to gravitational turbulence. Reed was in the engine room cursing the coils when Zara spotted a pattern in the stellar drift displays. "Marcus," she called through comms. "I think the particle flow is being redirected around a magnetic eddy." He reappeared on the bridge, hands stained with grease. "Show me." She pointed to the helix-like flow on the map. "See here. These paths aren't random. It's like water currents." Reed studied it, nodding slowly. "This could work. If we follow your adjustment, we might even save time." Zara hesitated. "You want me to input it?" "If you trust yourself." Her fingers danced over the controls. The ship responded. 6 hours shaved off. Reed grinned. "Nice work." Zara flushed. Not with shame, but with something far rarer, pride. They settled into rhythm. Zara took on navigation. Reed handled system maintenance. They alternated cooking and began growing herbs in the hydroponics bay. She laughed more. Danced once, alone in the cargo hold when she thought he wasn't watching. He didn't interrupt. Just smiled from the shadows. She caught him looking at her differently sometimes. Not possessively. Not like ownership. Just, with quiet wonder. And she looked back. The fourth week, they received a distress signal from a shuttle caught in an asteroid net. The crew, a family of 4 from Oriole Minor, was stranded. Reed didn't hesitate. Strap in, he told Zara. You're co-piloting this rescue. Adrenaline surged. The rescue was rough, debris, shifting fields, tight timing. Zara guided the drift through with pinpoint precision. Reed handled the towing beam. They pulled the shuttle free. The children hugged her. Called her a hero. It broke something open inside her. That night, in the quiet of the bridge, she stood beside Reed staring at the stars. I used to think my life ended the day I was sold, she said. Reed looked over. It didn't. It began the day I stepped onto this ship. He didn't speak. She turned toward him. I know I owe you nothing. And you don't expect anything. But, I want to stay. I want to help. To keep flying. Reed stepped closer. Not touching. Not crowding. Then stay. You're free, Zara. Not because I gave it to you. Because you claimed it. She smiled. Then, softly, she said. Teach me how to plot our next jump. Reed grinned. With pleasure. Haven Station shimmered against the dark backdrop of space, a golden ring of light suspended in orbit over the gas giant Ceres 9. Zara stood at the viewport of the stellar drift, arms folded over her chest, watching the station's approach with a mix of anticipation and unease. 3 months had passed since Reed had bought her contract, or rather, freed her from it. Every day since had been a lesson in discovering who she was when she wasn't being owned, used, or silenced. And every day, she and Reed had grown closer. She wasn't sure when exactly it had happened. Maybe it was the way he always made space for her without drawing attention to it. Maybe it was the quiet faith he placed in her decisions, or the gentle smiles he gave her when he thought she wasn't looking. Maybe it was just that, for the first time in her life, someone had given her room to breathe, and she'd started breathing him in. Now, docked at Haven for resupply, she felt a strange flutter in her chest. You ready? Reed's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him at the door, casual in a navy shirt and cargo pants, a data slate tucked under one arm. As ready as I'll ever be, she said. Do I look normal? He smiled. You look like someone who owns herself. That's more than normal. That's rare. She flushed slightly and followed him off the ship. The recreation district of Haven Station buzzed with life. Traders from across the sector mingled over food stalls and open-air cafes, their conversations weaving a tapestry of languages. Children floated in the zero-G playground, laughing in bursts that echoed through the station's clean corridors. Zara walked beside Reed, conscious of every step. She didn't feel invisible here. She felt seen. They stopped at a cafe overlooking the central dome, where violet foliage grew in a bioengineered arboretum. Reed ordered coffee and a pastry for her, a synth ginger tonic for himself. Haven always feels like a pause button, he said. Like the universe lets you breathe here. It's beautiful. Reed looked at her, not the station. Yeah. It is. Zara met his gaze and didn't look away. Marcus. Yeah. I need to say something. And it might sound complicated. He set down his drink. I'm listening. I'm not grateful anymore. His brow furrowed, but he waited. What I mean is, she continued, I'm not staying because I feel like I owe you. I don't. I know that now. You gave me freedom, but what I do with it is mine. His eyes softened. Exactly what I hoped you'd say. I'm staying because of who you are. Not what you did for me. She reached across the table, fingers brushing his. This isn't confusion or some twisted sense of obligation. This is me choosing you. Reed exhaled slowly, then smiled. I've wanted to hear those words for weeks, he said. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I needed you to believe it. To know it. Not just feel it. Not because you were rescued. But because you wanted me. Zara stood, moving around the table. She took his face in her hands and kissed him. Softly, deliberately. It wasn't the heat of passion or the desperation of longing. It was clarity. It was a promise. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I've been falling for you every day since you stepped onto my ship, he whispered. Then stop falling, she replied, her breath hitching, and stand beside me. Back aboard the stellar drift, they didn't go to separate quarters. Zara led him to the observation lounge where stars drifted past like silver feathers in a dark sea. She undressed slowly, not with shame but with confidence. Reed followed, reverent in every touch. There was no rush, no urgency. Just time, and trust. When his hands moved over her skin, she didn't flinch. When he kissed the scar on her hip, she didn't hide it. When she cried out in pleasure, it was a sound born of joy, not pain. And when they lay together afterward, tangled in a warm silence, she rested her head on his chest and listened to the beat of a heart that matched her own. What happens now? She asked. Whatever you want, Reed murmured. I want to see the ocean. Cerulean ivy, remember? The one with 3 moons. He smiled. Then that's where we'll go. And after that? Wherever you choose. We'll write our story one system at a time. She kissed him again. In the days that followed, everything changed, and nothing did. They still worked side by side. They still argued about NAV routes, laughed over broken food processors, and took turns cooking meals. But now, there was an unspoken intimacy in every glance, every shared silence. Zara started leaving little notes on Reed's datapad, simple things like, you missed a spot, with a doodle, or, don't forget to check the left thruster seal. Again. Reed responded in kind. Sometimes with coordinates to new stars. Sometimes with hand-drawn constellations. Once with a carefully replicated recipe from her favorite station cafe. One evening, while repairing a hull panel together, Zara said. I've been thinking of getting certified. Captain grade. Reed looked up. You should. You're ready. Would you co-sign my application? Zara. I'd follow you into a collapsing sun if you asked. 2 weeks later, her certification came through. Zara Nail, licensed interstellar cargo captain, registry #8891T5. Reed handed her the patch himself. She pinned it to her new jacket. Feels weird, she said. Official. You earned it. All of it. She kissed him in front of the whole dock crew. On cerulean ivy, they stood on a black sand beach watching the twin suns dip below the horizon. 3 moons cast pale light across the ocean, which shimmered in hues of sapphire and silver. Zara waded into the surf, the warm water curling around her calves. It's real, she whispered. So are you, Reed said from behind her. She turned, soaking wet, and pulled him in. They collapsed into the surf, laughing like children, kissing like lovers who had never known fear. And above them, the stars sang of freedom. The red belt was more myth than location. A stretch of lawless space littered with broken hulls, derelict warships, and the whispers of those who died trying to cross it. Pirates called it a hunting ground. Merchants called it a graveyard. Ronan called it their last shot. The vagrant star cruised slow through the maze of metal and forgotten war. Its stealth field shimmered weakly, already overtaxed. Systems flickered, and one engine gave a worrying cough with each propulsion burst. "We're too exposed," said Ansel, the ship's grizzled pilot, fingers tense on the controls. "Another jump like that and the whole system could fry." "We don't have time to stop," Ronan replied. He stood beside Ansel, arms crossed, face bruised from their last encounter. "If we don't make it past the belt, Saren goes back to chains." She stood in the back, arms wrapped around herself, barely breathing. The echo of her uncle's voice still haunted her. "You shame your house." The truth was, she didn't belong to any house. Not anymore. She belonged to herself. And to this ship. To Ronan. Still, fear clung to her skin like frost. "Contacts," muttered Keela, the communications officer. "Ulari signature. Cruisers. 2 of them. Bearing 018. One's definitely the same warship that hit us near the belt's edge. They've tracked us." Ronan didn't swear. He simply nodded. "Everyone to battle stations." "No weapons lock yet," Keela added. "We might still have time." "Time for what?" Ansel asked. Ronan turned to Saren. "Time for her to decide." She stared at him. "Me? You know their tactics. You were raised among them. You can guess what they'll do next." Saren took a trembling breath, stepped forward, and studied the data Keela projected. "They'll flank. Not fire right away. They'll try to disable the ship and board. Ulari always want their property returned intact." Her voice was quiet, controlled. "That buys us 5 minutes. Maybe 6. Enough for a plan?" Ansel asked. Ronan smiled grimly. "Barely." The bridge dimmed as the ship powered down all unnecessary systems. Every ounce of energy was being fed into shields and maneuvering thrusters. The stealth field flickered again. In the cargo bay, Ronan and Saren suited up. Not for vacuum, but for infiltration. Saren slipped into a matte black bodysuit. "It's Ulari we've designed for infiltration squads." She had worn one only once before, when she was being presented to a bidder. "Feels different now," she said softly. Ronan glanced over. "You sure about this?" She nodded. "If we try to outrun them, they'll destroy the ship. If we can disrupt their systems from inside, we'll have a chance. This is the only move that gives us control." Ronan admired her strength. There were no tremors in her hands now. No hesitation in her eyes. Saren had chosen a path, and she was walking it freely. Their plan was reckless. Use one of the Vagrant Star's emergency pods to launch toward the Ulari cruiser under the guise of debris. Board it mid-combat. Disrupt its targeting systems. Disable the command bridge. Then signal the star to make the jump through the red belt. "Just like old times," Ronan muttered, clipping on his harness. "You used to storm ships?" she asked. He gave her a sly grin. "Back before I was an honest trader." The pod launched in silence. The world narrowed to the flicker of debris fields and the silhouette of a massive Ulari ship against the void. As they neared, Ronan's hand brushed Saren's. "No matter what happens." "I'm not going back," she interrupted. The pod slammed into the underside of the Ulari cruiser. Magnetic clamps latched. Ronan punched through the hull with an old breaching charge. Inside was chaos. Alarms blared. Ulari guards swarmed, but they hadn't expected boarders, especially not from a ship they assumed was running. Ronan took point, pulse pistol in hand, while Saren followed, guiding them through the twisted maze of Ulari architecture. "They'll seal the command corridor," she warned. "Not if we overload the coolant systems near the core," he said. "That could trigger a meltdown." Only if we fail. They fought their way to the engineering bay. Saren worked fast, fingers dancing over systems she hadn't touched in years. One wrong wire, and they'd fry. One missed override, and the ship would lock them out. The coolant alarm shrieked. "We've got 2 minutes," she said. "Maybe less." They sprinted through steam and flashing lights. Olari guards fell behind them. Then they reached the bridge. It was her uncle who stood at the helm. "Well," he said, voice venomous. "The runaway whore returns. And with her pet human." Ronan lifted his gun. "Watch your mouth." Saren stepped between them. "No violence," she said. "Not yet." The Olari commander sneered. "Do you think you've become something? You're still a Vatra. Still marked by contract and caste. Your name means nothing." She held his gaze. "Then I'll make a new one." And she did something Ronan never expected. She took the command terminal, and with a string of codes known only to the House of Vatra, she shut the cruiser down. Emergency lights bathed the room in red. Power flickered. Doors slammed. The entire ship shuddered. "You little," her uncle snarled. Ronan didn't wait. One strike. The Olari commander dropped. They signaled the vagrant star. "Jump now." Ronan barked. Ansel responded. "We've got a window. Hold on." The star streaked past the disabled cruiser. Saren and Ronan sprinted back to the breach pod. Alarms roared. The ship shook violently. They barely made it. The pod detached. Debris spiraled. Then the vagrant star snagged them in its tractor beam just before the jump. They made it through the red belt. Burned. Bruised. But alive. Ronan lay on the medbay cot, stitched and sore. Saren sat beside him, holding his hand. "You saved us," he murmured. She shook her head. "No. You gave me the chance to become someone who could." He reached up, brushed a lock of hair from her cheek. "What now?" Her eyes softened. "Now, we build something no one can take away." And somewhere beyond the belt, on the edge of the expanse, a new life awaited. Free. Together. Unbreakable. The station at the edge of the expanse was little more than a cluster of welded-together platforms orbiting a dying star. They called it Haven's Reach, not because it was peaceful, but because even war forgot it existed. For people like Saren and Ronan, that made it perfect. The vagrant star limped into dock, hull scorched, systems failing. No one asked questions. In Haven's Reach, everyone had secrets. "Repairs'll take weeks," Ansel muttered as he disembarked. "Assuming we find parts that weren't stolen from us in the first place." Ronan stepped down behind him, Saren at his side. The moment her boots touched the platform, she looked up, not at the dying sun above, but at the neon sign flickering on the station's bar. "Welcome to freedom," she whispered. They took a small room in the lower decks of the Reach, above a tea-house run by an old Naali woman with blind eyes and perfect memory. The walls were thin, the lights dim, but for the first time, Saren didn't feel like property. She slept curled in Ronan's arms, no chains on her wrists, no fear pressing down on her chest. For a few days, there was peace. They explored the station, its bizarre markets, gravity-shifted gardens, and underground brawling pits. Saren wore a hood at first, wary of recognition. But no one here looked twice at a blue-skinned girl with wary eyes and a quick mind. They made plans, too. "What do you want?" Ronan asked her one night, as they shared a plate of synth fruit and bread near the hydroponics dome. Saren hesitated. "I want to help others. Like me. Slaves. Not just slaves. Anyone bought, owned, traded, thrown away." She looked out at the stars. "I want to find them. Free them. Give them what you gave me. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then we'll build it. They started small. Ronan traded old smuggling favors for a warehouse module near the edge of the station. Ansel helped retrofit it into living quarters and a basic command center. Keela routed their comms through half a dozen black market satellites. They named it the Emberlight Refuge. Word spread fast. Broken ships limped in under cover of night. People arrived with nothing but burns, broken contracts, and shattered pasts. Saren met each one personally. She never asked about their past. Only about their future. And then the message came. Encrypted. Barely traceable. But unmistakable in origin. Her uncle was alive. And he wanted her back. Ronan paced the command center as Saren stood frozen, the message looping on the cracked holoscreen. Her uncle's voice was calm, mocking. You have 1 week to surrender yourself, niece. You know what you stole. Return it, or we come for it. And for your human. Saren turned away. Her face was unreadable. We should run, Keela said. Hide the star. Shut down the station for a few weeks. No, Saren whispered. Everyone turned. We fight, she said. She spent the night alone on the hull of the station, staring at the stars. Ronan found her there, hours later. He sat beside her, said nothing at first. I used to stare up at these same stars and wonder if I'd ever escape, she said finally. Now I wonder if I'm strong enough to protect the people who did. You are, he said. You're sure? He touched her cheek, drew her gaze to him. I've seen you defy your chains, outthink a warship, and disarm an empire. You are the fire they thought they could tame. She smiled, soft and fierce. Then light it with me. The days flew. Saren organized defenses. Ronan contacted old allies, pirates, mercenaries, even a defrocked preacher with an ion cannon. Ansel wired the station's reactor to a defense grid, while Keela built a sensor net from stolen parts and miracle code. And people came. Former slaves. Ex-mercenaries. Station-born scavengers. Not for coin. Not for glory. But because someone had once given them hope, and they refused to let that flame die. They came at dawn cycle. 3 Ulari warships. Sleek. Black. Bristling with weapons. The first salvo shattered the outer comm ring. The second scorched half the hydroponic dome. The Emberlight didn't fall. Ansel's grid came online with a shriek of energy, catching one cruiser mid-flight and tearing it apart. Ronan led a boarding party onto a second. Saren stood on the command deck, eyes locked on the third ship, the flagship. Her uncle's. This ends with me, she said. She launched alone. The Ulari flagship was a fortress. But Saren moved like flame. Through corridors she'd once walked in silence. Past guards who remembered her as nothing but a name on a manifest. Now they fled. She found her uncle in the throne room bridge, draped in finery, flanked by armored guards. He smiled when he saw her. I taught you well, he said. You taught me fear, she replied. And you still wear it. She dropped the cloak. Raised her weapon. Not anymore. The fight was brutal. Quick. Saren disarmed one guard, used his blade against another. Her uncle watched, bemused. When it was over, he stood alone. I should have sold you to the flesh markets, he hissed. You did, she said. But I found my worth anyway. He reached for a hidden blade. And Ronan shot him through the shoulder from the doorway. You're late, she said, panting. I never let you have all the fun, he replied. They left him bleeding and locked. Then activated the ship's comm. This is Saren Vatra, she said. To all aboard, lay down your arms. This vessel is seized. You are free. They brought the ship back to Haven's Reach. People wept. Cheered. Lit candles. The Emberlight's beacon pulsed across systems, calling the broken, the beaten, the brave. Saren stood on the balcony above the refuge, overlooking the crowd. Ronan stood beside her. You ready? He asked. She nodded. To lead? To live? She turned to him. Eyes bright. Yes. He took her hand. Then wherever you go, I'll be at your side. She smiled. Then let's light up the dark. Together, they faced the stars. Not as fugitives. Not as survivors. But as a promise the galaxy would never silence.